The twin moons of Zarian cast pale shadows across the abandoned mining station as Nira stumbled through the rust-covered corridors. Her daughter Zara hung limply in her arms, the child's breathing shallow and labored. 3 days without food, 2 without water, and now her little girl was burning with fever from the infection spreading through her wounded leg. Nira had heard whispers in the refugee camps about a human who lived alone in the old mining complex. Some called him dangerous, others said he was mad. But desperate mothers don't have the luxury of believing rumors. She needed help, and this mysterious human was her only chance. The corridor opened into a vast chamber where ancient mining equipment stood like metal giants in the darkness. But there was light here, warm and golden, spilling from a doorway carved into the rock wall. As she approached, she could hear the soft hum of generators and the rhythmic clicking of machinery. She knocked on the metal door with trembling fingers. After what felt like an eternity, heavy footsteps approached from within. The door hissed open, revealing a tall human with weathered features and intelligent gray eyes. His brown hair was streaked with premature silver, and his work clothes were clean despite the harsh environment. This was Kale, though she didn't know his name yet. He looked at her with surprise. Then his gaze dropped to the fevering child in her arms. Without a word, he stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. "Please," Nira whispered, her voice breaking. "My daughter, ... she's dying. I have nothing to offer except ... double quotes. She swallowed hard. Except myself. One night with me, and in exchange, please save her." Kale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He reached out slowly, carefully checking Zara's forehead with the back of his hand. The child's skin was burning hot. "Keep your offers," he said quietly, his voice rough from disuse. "Bring her to the medical bay." Nira stared at him in shock. In all her months of desperate survival, no one had ever refused her bargain and still offered help. She followed him deeper into his hidden sanctuary, past shelves lined with salvaged electronics and careful repairs that spoke of a methodical, intelligent mind. The medical bay was surprisingly well equipped. Kale began pulling out supplies with practiced efficiency, his movements quick but gentle as he examined Zara. "Infection in the leg, dehydration, malnutrition," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "When did she last eat?" 3 days ago. Maybe 4. Nira watched his face for signs of judgment or cruelty, but found only focused concern. Kale nodded, hooking up a small 4-line to Zara's arm with surprising gentleness. "She'll need antibiotics and nutrients. The fever should break by morning." He looked up at Nira. "When did you last eat?" The simple question, asked without expectation or demand, nearly broke her. She had been prepared for violence, for cruelty, for the cold transaction she had offered. She had not been prepared for kindness. "I don't remember," she admitted. Kale stood and walked to a storage unit, turning with a packet of emergency rations and a water bottle. "Eat, your daughter will need you strong." He paused at the doorway. "There's a cot in the next room. Rest. Both of you are safe here." As his footsteps faded down the corridor, Nira sank into the chair beside her daughter's bed. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to cry. Not from despair, but from the overwhelming relief of finding something she had thought extinct. In this harsh galaxy, genuine human compassion. Morning came slowly to the underground chambers, marked only by the soft chiming of Kale's chronometer. Nira woke to find Zara's fever had indeed broken, just as the human had promised. The child was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady and deep. The 4-bag hung nearly empty. Having worked its healing magic through the night, Kale appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray of hot food. Real food, not the processed survival rations she had grown accustomed to. The smell made her stomach clench with hunger. "How is she?" he asked, setting the tray on a small table near the bed. "Better. Much better." Nira studied his face in the morning light. There were scars along his jaw, and his hands bore the calluses of someone who worked with tools and machinery. "You're an engineer," he nodded, checking Zara's vital signs on a small handheld scanner. "He's colony engineer for New Harmony Settlement." His voice carried a weight that suggested tragedy. That was before what? Cale was quiet for a long moment, watching Zara sleep. Before the raiders came.
No, before everything burned.
He looked at Nira with those steady gray eyes. What's your story? How did you end up here with a sick child and no one to help you? As they shared the simple breakfast, Nira found herself telling him everything. About her life as a teacher on Valdris, about her husband who died defending their town from raiders. About the long months of running and hiding with Zara, she told. Him about the cold nights and hungry days, about the way people looked through her as if she were already dead. Cale listened without judgment, occasionally asking gentle questions. When she finished, he was quiet for a while, cleaning and organizing his medical supplies with methodical precision. The settlement I helped build, he said finally. It was supposed to be a safe place. Families, children, a fresh start on a new world. His hands stilled on the instruments. I designed the defense systems, the shelters, the life support. I thought I could protect them all. What happened? I was off planet when they attacked. Supply run that should have taken 2 days. When I got back, he trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. There was nothing left to protect. Nira reached across the small space between them and touched his hand. The simple contact seemed to surprise them both. His skin was warm, his fingers strong from years of skilled work. I'm sorry, she whispered. So am I. His eyes met hers, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with something deeper than sympathy. I've been alone here for 2 years, I thought. I preferred it that way. Zara stirred on the bed, opening bright green eyes and looking around with curiosity rather than fear. Mama, where are we? Nira moved to her daughter's side, smoothing back her hair. We're safe, little star. This kind human is helping us. Cale approached the bed slowly, offering Zara a small toy he had crafted from scrap metal. It was a tiny bird that flapped its wings when wound up. The child's face lit up with the first genuine smile Nira had seen in months. What's your name? Zara asked him directly, clutching the toy bird. Cale, what's yours? Zara. And this is my mama, Nira. Something shifted in the chamber as names were exchanged. They were no longer strangers bound by desperation and charity. They were individuals, choosing to trust each other, one small step at a time. Over the following days, Nira discovered that Cale's sanctuary was far more sophisticated than it appeared. Hidden passages connected multiple chambers carved into the asteroid's core. Workshop areas hummed with salvage technology. Gardens provided fresh food. He had built not just a hiding place, but a home. You could support a dozen people here, Nira observed, as he showed her the water reclamation system. Cale's hands paused on the control panel. That was the idea. Originally, I kept thinking other survivors would find their way here, but he shrugged. Maybe I wasn't ready to let anyone in. And now. He looked at her, standing in the soft light of the growing chambers, with Zara playing nearby. Now I'm wondering why I waited so long. Their eyes met across the space, and Nira felt. Her pulse quickened. There was something in his gaze that had nothing to do with pity or charity. Something that made her remember she was not just a desperate mother, but a woman. That evening, after Zara had fallen asleep, they found themselves working side by side in his electronics workshop. Cale was teaching her to repair a damaged circuit, Boards' hands occasionally covering hers to guide her movements. The contact sent warmth racing up her arms. You're a quick learner, he said softly, close enough that she could feel his breath on her cheek. I had to be. The last 2 years taught me that survival means adaptation. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. What did they teach you? That some things are worth fighting for? His hand came up to touch her face, fingers tracing the line of her jaw, and that sometimes the thing you need most finds you when you least expect it. The kiss was gentle at first, hesitant and questioning, but when Nira responded, rising on her toes to meet him, it deepened into something hungry and desperate. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. And he responded by lifting her onto the workbench, stepping between her knees. He whispered against her lips, his voice rough with want. I know, she breathed back. I know this is complicated. I know we barely know each other, but I feel... alive, he finished. For the first time in years, I feel alive. They broke apart, at the sound of footsteps in the corridor, both breathing hard. But Zara had only gotten up for water, and they listened to her small feet padding back to bed. We should be careful, Nira said, though she made no move to step away from him. Yes, Cale agreed, his hands still resting on her hips. Neither of them moved. The next morning brought alarm bells. Cale's perimeter sensors had detected movement in the outer asteroid field, ships moving with purpose rather than the random drift of salvagers. Raiders, Nira asked, watching the displays with growing dread. Maybe, or worse. Cale's fingers flew over the controls, activating defensive systems he had hoped never to use. Take Zara to the deep shelter. Food and supplies are already there. About you. Someone needs to monitor the situation. They're just passing through, ... And if they're not? He looked at her, and she saw the same determination that had once driven him to build a colony from nothing. Then we fight. The raiders arrived like a plague of metal locusts, their ships scarred and brutal. From the hidden observation post, Cale counted 8 vessels, enough to carry 40 or 50 fighters. His defensive systems could handle maybe half that number. They found the main entrance, he reported through the comm system to the deep shelter where Nira waited with Zara. Sealing blast doors now. The shelter was 3 levels down, connected to the surface by a shaft that could be collapsed, if necessary. But Nira couldn't bear the thought of Cale facing the raiders alone. Zara, listen to me, she said to her daughter, kneeling down to meet her eyes. I need you to hide in the safety room, just like we practiced, no matter what you... Here, don't come out until Cale or I come for you. Mama, no, the child pleaded. But Nira was already sealing the inner door. She found Cale in the main control room, surrounded by displays showing the raiders cutting through his outer defenses. His face was grim, but determined. Stay in the shelter, he said without looking away from the screens. And leave you to face them alone? I don't think so. Move to the secondary control panel. Show me how to help. For a moment, she thought he would argue. Then he nodded sharply and began explaining the defensive grid. Turrets here and here, blast doors can channel them through kill zones. But there are too many of them, and we make ourselves too expensive. To bother with, the first explosions shook the station. The raiders had breached the outer airlock and were advancing through the old mining tunnels. Cale's automated defenses took down several, but the rest kept coming, professional and ruthless. There through the main corridor, Nira reported, watching her assigned monitors. 20 fighters, heavy weapons, closing blast door 7. Should funnel them toward. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light. But the damage was done. Raiders had found and severed the main power trunk. Manual override, Cale muttered, grabbing a weapon from a wall locker. I have to get to junction box 12. That's through raider territory now. Dodge. He looked at her, and in that moment, she saw not just determination, but fear. Not for himself, but for her and Zara. Like something happens to me. ... She silenced him with a fierce kiss. Nothing happens to you. We do this together, or not at all. All. They moved through the darkened corridors like ghosts. Using maintenance shafts and hidden passages, Cale had built for exactly this purpose. The raiders were loud and confident, never imagining that anyone would be stupid enough to move toward them instead of away, at junction box 12. Nira stood watch while Cale worked by the light of a small torch. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, rerouting power around the damaged systems. Movement, she whispered, seeing shadows in the corridor beyond. 3 raiders rounded the corner, weapons ready. But they hadn't expected an ambush from above. Cale's first shot took down the leader, Nira, surprised by her own accuracy with. The unfamiliar weapon disabled the second. The third raised his gun toward Cale, and she didn't hesitate. Her shot was clean and final. Nice shooting, Cale said, breathing hard. Don't sound so surprised. But her hands were shaking as she helped him finish the repairs. Power restored. They fought their way back to the control room, the defensive. Grid came online with a vengeance. Automated systems targeting the remaining raiders with lethal precision. Those who couldn't retreat fast enough didn't retreat at all. In the aftermath, standing among the smoking remains of their defenses, Nira and Kale held each other close. They had fought together, trusted each other with their lives, and survived. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now." He looked around at the damage, already calculating repairs and improvements. "But they'll be back. Or others like them. Then we'll be ready. She pulled back to look at him, this strong, gentle man who had saved her daughter and given her back her life. "If you'll have us permanently." His answer was another kiss, deeper and more certain than any words. 3 months later, the mining station was transformed. What had once been Kale's solitary refuge was now a thriving sanctuary. The first refugees had arrived 2 weeks after the raider attack, drawn by rumors of a safe haven where humans and aliens worked together. Nira stood in the expanded hydroponic bay, watching Zara play with 3 other children while their parents worked nearby. The sound of laughter echoed off the metal walls, a sound that had been absent for too long. "The Valdris family wants to stay permanently," she reported to Kale as he joined her. "And the Zentari engineers think they can expand the power grid to support 50 more people." 50 more, Kale mused, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "Remember when you said I could support a dozen people here? I was thinking too small." She leaned back against his chest, savoring the warmth and security of his embrace. "We all were." The sanctuary now housed 23 refugees from 7 different species. Former soldiers worked alongside teachers and farmers. Engineers collaborated with artists. Children played games that mixed traditions from a dozen worlds. "The council meeting is tonight," Nira reminded him. "We need to discuss the new arrivals from the Kepler system," later Kale murmured, his lips finding the sensitive spot behind her ear. "Right now, I have more important business." She turned. In his arms, reaching up to run her fingers through his hair. In the months since the raid, the premature silver had spread, but his eyes were lighter, happier. "What kind of business?" Instead of answering, he dropped to one knee, right there in the garden bay. Several people stopped working to stare, as he pulled out a ring crafted from salvaged metals and a crystal from the asteroid's core. "Nira," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush. "You gave me back my purpose. You and Zara turned my hiding place into a home. Will you marry me?" Around them, the diverse crowd of refugees began to cheer and clap. Someone started crying. Zara came running over, demanding to know what was happening. "He's asking me to be his wife," Nira explained to her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "What do you think?" "I think yes," Zara declared loudly. "Then he can be my papa too." Nira looked down at Kale, this remarkable man who had responded to her desperate bargain with kindness instead of exploitation, who had built something beautiful from the ruins of loss, who had shown her that hope could bloom even in the darkest places. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." The kiss that followed was witnessed by 23 refugees who had all found their way to safety because 2 broken people had chosen to trust each other. As cheers echoed through the corridors, Nira realized this was more than a proposal or even a wedding. This was the birth of something new. A community built not on desperation or survival, but on the radical idea that people could be good to each other, that kindness could be stronger than cruelty, that love could grow in the most unlikely places. Later that night, after the impromptu celebration had wound down and Zara was asleep in her own room, Nira and Kale stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships moved in the distance, some carrying refugees who didn't yet know they had a destination. "No regrets?" Kale asked, his arm tight around her shoulders. "Only one," she said, smiling up at him. "I regret that it took me so long to find you." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, full of promise for all the tomorrows they would build together. Around them, their chosen family slept safely and beyond the walls of their sanctuary. The galaxy slowly learned that sometimes, in the darkest times, hope wore a human face. the mining station that had once been a tomb for Kale's dreams was now the birthplace of something unprecedented, a place where love had conquered fear, where trust had triumphed over desperation, and where the simple act of choosing kindness over exploitation had created ripples that would spread across the stars. And in the quiet moments between the urgent needs of their growing community, Nira and Kale continued to discover each other, their love deepening with each shared challenge and triumph. They had both lost everything once. Now they had everything that mattered: each other, their daughter, and a future full of infinite possibilities.